Hi, welcome to International Recaps. At the beginning of the series, we see Nick's family. Nick's mother's birthday is being celebrated. They were all excited. Suddenly, Nick's sister, Pia, expresses her displeasure because Nick had replaced his mother's gift, and he had not shared about this plan with Pia. Then Pia thinks that it will be the plan of Nick's wife, Sophie, and Sophie has done it on purpose. As a result, Pia starts to get angry with Sophie, and Sophie has done it on purpose. Seeing it, Nick is angered, and he tells her to go outside. Thus, Pia gets irritated by this. After this, she moves to a club and drinks too much. Pia talks with a boy on a dating app. That boy is using a false name. They are still talking with each other when Pia's phone is dropped into the toilet. She puts her cell phone in a box and closes it. The next day, Pia is at work in the hospital. Pia's friend shows her a video. It belongs to her brother Nick. He was holding a sign that said, "I abused a girl, and if this video reaches 5 million views, I will kill myself." First of all, Pia was taking it for fun. Then she realized that her brother, Nick, was really missing. Pia tells the wife of Nick, named Sophie, about this video. So they both go to the police officers. Pia meets a detective, and he is the same boy with whom Pia had talked through an app, who has given his fake name. Now that the detective interrogates both about Nick, and he consoles them, saying, "We will soon discover Nick." Then Pia tells that detective to delete that video. This news is spreading throughout the city. The views were also increasing on TV with it. Afterwards, Pia's cell phone works. When she checks her mobile, then she comes to know that her brother Nick had sent her a voice message last night, where Nick was asking for an apology from Pia about the last night incident. Nick tells her that there is something in my mind, and I also wanted to tell all of you about it. Now that Pia had noticed that Nick has been behaving strangely for many days, and he was worried about something. Pia had tried to talk to Nick about it, but Nick had revealed nothing. After this, a new video of Nick has also appeared. At this time, there was written on the signboard that I had killed a girl. But Pia observes, this handwriting does not match Nick's writing. It was clear that Nick had been kidnapped, and someone was manipulating Nick. But those detectives suspected Nick. Then Pia is irritated by this and becomes angry. But it does not affect them, and they were listening quietly. After this, Pia tells about that voice message to Sophie, and she says that we should inform the police station about it. But Sophie forbids her while saying that police are already suspecting Nick. They may get into trouble with this voice message. Police were doing nothing to find Nick, so they had to do what was needed to do. So Pia moves to her friend in order to ask for help from her, who was the computer expert, because he had a lot of knowledge about computers. Pia's friend makes software. He was trying to search for Nick with the help of people. Pia's friend reveals to her what we have known after checking both videos. Both videos were made in the delivery van. At the same time, Nick's friend approaches. After this, they both go to the detective together. Now they try to track the delivery man. Pia checks that views are increasing very quickly, and the video crosses the 1,000,000 views. Meanwhile, the detective tells Pia, "We have found van." They check that van, but Nick is not there. He was missing from there, and there is no knowledge about him. So the sergeant says to them, "We will now approach this case like a murder case." They then proceed to Nick's room. Detective get Nick's iPad. Nick's son was attempting to track him using it via an app. They are tracking Nick in this area. They make a mark there. After this, the detective tells Pia, "I am not handling this case but that agent. I wish I could help you, but I am unable to do so." Detective tells here to sergeant, "I have gotten some messages from the cell phone of Nick's son. It has been cleared that there was some disturbance between Nick and Sophie, and they had a disagreement about anything." The sergeant tells the detective that Nick's family has requested that you should be included in this case, so you can also work on this case. The next day, the detective received a message from Pia. She wanted to show him something, and she told the detective about the voicemail. When that detective asks Sophie about it, she says that there was no clash between me and Nick but between Nick and Pia, and who knows that he was discussing this in his voice message. Then that detective asks Pia about it. Then Pia tells him that it was a minor dispute between siblings. Then Pia also tells him that Nick had visited the hospital exactly after his birthday, because he was injured and someone had beaten him. When that detective checks that date, he comes to know that Nick had visited a bar that night. The detective checks the CCTV video. The detective discovers that Nick had a brawl with a man in a bar that night. That man had beaten him. After that, the detective shows this footage to Pia. Detective tells her this man may be suspected. Who knows, that man may have abducted Nick. Afterwards, the detective tells the agent, "If we check the area of traffic, there is still an area in the city. It has not been discovered by us." After this, these people move there and start checking out the place, where they discover Nick, but he was no more. Then the detective informed Pia the death of her brother. Now they wanted to find the murderer of Nick. Later, the detective checks the private account of Sophie. They find a photo of a man with Sophie. He was her friend, and this was the person who had hit Nick in the bar. So the detective and that agent asked Sophie about it. Sophie says that he is my friend. He was a teacher at my school and a colleague of mine, and I have met him before. Then Sophie tells her mother about it, that the police suspect that my friend is behind this crime. It is his fault if he has really committed it. Later, Sophie sends a message to her friend that I want to meet you. Then Sophie goes to meet her friend. Sophie's friend reveals here that I had been called to meet by Nick, and he tells a lie that I have been beaten by Nick. Then the police arrive and arrest both of them. After this, the detective and agent begin to interrogate Sophie. Then Sophie tells, we were not only friends but also beloved. Later, I told Nick about this relationship. I had also broken up with my friend, but my friend was damn serious about this relationship, so he was aggressive afterward. Detective and agent tell Sophie here that we have checked your friend's computer data. He was tracking Nick. If we get the evidence against your friend, then your relationship will have to be exposed to the public. Sophie did not want that her family and kids know about her relationship. It is revealed on the coming day that Sophie's friend has been arrested in this case. Sophie forbids her children to watch this news. Pia doubted Sophia on this action. Pia asked Sophie about this. What is going on between both of you? Sophie says, it was just my mistake, and I had shared it with Nick, and we both were trying that. This matter may be resolved. Meanwhile, Nick's son hears the conversation between Sophie and Pia. He leaves the house in anger. After it, Sophie goes in search of his son. Then Sophie notices that a lady has been chasing her for a long time. Then Sophie catches her. That lady says, my name is Emma and I was in a relationship with your husband. And we had met through an app, and your husband had a fake identity. At the same time, Sophie receives the call of Pia, and she says to her, your son is with me. After this, Sophie comes to the house of Pia. Sophie tells Pia that I had met a lady, and her relationship was with Nick. She had met on an app. Nick had his fake identity. Pia checks the fake name profile of Nick, but that profile was not active. But Pia restores that account with the help of her friend. Pia tells to Sophia that Lady Emma was speaking the truth. In reality, there was a relationship between Nick and Emma. After this, the time from weeks ago is shown, where Emma knows that a man with whom she was introduced on an app, who was his fake identity, he is no more. And the person with whom she had been in a relationship for a long time, his real name was Nick. He is married and has 2 kids. But Emma wanted to help Nick's family here, so she meets Sophie, arriving in this city, and she reveals the whole fact to her. After this, Emma meets with that detective. She tells him that I introduced him to Nick on an app, and we developed affection for each other. After this, Emma goes to the sports center, where she meets with Nick's friend, and they talk a little bit about Nick here. Later, Nick's friend moves away. After it, Pia goes to Nick's friend, and she asks her, did you already know about Nick's relationship? Nick's friend tells Pia, a lady named Emma had come to meet me recently, and Pia goes to a hotel to meet Emma. Emma discloses to Pia that I and your brother were in love, and your brother was not satisfied with his married life, and he said to me, he will divorce Sophie when his son's high school studies are completed. I was just helping him with his issue. Pia goes away. Emma receives a call of unknown person, and that person immediately asks Emma to leave this city. Emma calls the police, but she had been scared, so she escapes from the hotel. She is being chased by a car at the same moment, and Emma gets into a collision. Afterwards, Emma is brought to the hospital. She told the whole story to the detective. Meanwhile, Pia also arrives there. Then the detective says, Pia, Emma is not the only girl who was in a relationship with your brother. There are 2 other girls like her. Pia told to Emma that you were not only one. There are 2 more girls in my brother's life. And Nick used to meet different girls through that app. One of the girls' names was Mandy. Then Emma goes to meet her after getting details about her. Emma tells her, Nick had promised me the same thing that had been promised to Mandy. Emma decides to expose Nick to everyone. So Emma contacts a reporter. Then that reporter interviews Emma. Emma tells him, Nick traps the different girls on an app. After this, that reporter shows this interview to his senior reporters. The senior reporter says, we had knowledge that Nick used to entrap the girls, and we have to find it whether Nick killed any of those girls. So that reporter asks the other reporter to interview Sophie. Then that reporter talks with Sophie's friend about Sophie, but they forbade them to do so. Now that reporter enters Sophie's house as a delivery man, but he is caught. That reporter says, Sophie, that Emma has revealed the whole truth to the press. Sophie, angered, approaches the senior reporter with her lawyer. Sophie says to that reporter, stop taking the interview of Emma. That reporter says, if you give an interview to us, we will not take Emma's interview. Sophie agrees on this. Later, another reporter tells his friend, we have known the profiles of Nick until now. He will have many more. After this, a reporter checks an article on the website of Nick's college. Then that reporter saw a student had commented there. She had written, "No matter how you appreciate Nick, but you didn't know about him until now." That reporter goes to that Nick student to know about it, and he collects information from her about it. Then that girl tells that reporter, "I had witnessed my friends named Tara and Nick." Exactly after this, Tara left that team. Later, that reporter goes to Tara, but Tara does not reveal a single fact to him. Then that reporter's friend tells him, one more Nick's profile has been obtained. They get information about a girl when they check that account. That girl had also written down her fake identity. They then traced the photo and went to a bookstore. That reporter comes to know that that girl's real name was Sarah, and that girl committed suicide before 4 months. When that reporter checks about Sarah, then he comes to know that Sarah has a brother named Simon. After this, that reporter moves to the house of Simon, and he begins to examine her house and gets the cell phone of Sarah. At the same time, Sarah's brother Simon appears on it, but that reporter succeeds in escaping from there. When that reporter checks Sarah's mobile, he gets the messages from Sarah and Nick. The reporter knows here that Sarah was upset because of the breakup with Nick, so she committed suicide. Then that reporter shows these messages to his senior reporter, and he says that I will interview Sophie. After this, that reporter interviews Sophie, where he says, "Sophie, there was also another girl named Sarah. He was in a relationship with Nick. She has committed suicide." The reporter shows the messages of both of them to Sophie. Sophie does not understand anything here. What should she do here? So she moves away silently. After this, Sophie returns to the house. She does not want her family to watch her interview, but her family is watching her interview, and they know it. But Sarah had committed suicide because of Nick, and it was Nick who told Sarah to do as such. Then the scene before 6 months is shown, where Simon receives a call from his sister Sarah, who is worried. She is weeping. When Simon returns to his home, he finds Sarah dead there. When Simon checks the mobile of Sarah, then he comes to know that he has done it for his app friend, because Sarah had told her brother, "That's my friend on the app," and Simon had forbidden her. Keep away from everyone. When Simon checks about that app friend, then he knows that his real name is Nick. So Simon abducts Nick with the help of his friend. After this, Simon's friend comes to him, and he tells him, "The police have found everything. How did it happen?" Simon tells him, "A reporter had intruded on my house, and he stole Sarah's cell phone." Then a detective comes there and questioning Simon. Then Simon says, "I know nothing about Sarah and Nick. I never met Nick when everything was happening. Then I had gone along with my friend for fishing." After this, the detective goes away. When he checks Simon's profile, then he posted regarding fishing. Meanwhile, Pia is calling detective. Then the detective tells her that I have come here to meet Simon. Pia met the detective, and he said to her, "I think that Simon is hiding something from me." On the other side, Simon and his friend had known the police can arrive at any time, so they plan to escape. The next day, when Simon tries to escape, the detective catches him. Pia witnesses Simon's friend escaping and punches him. After this, the detective starts to investigate Simon. The detective tells him, "There's no need to hide. Your friend has revealed all the facts." Simon tells him, "I want to talk." Nick's sister, Pia, talks with Simon. Simon said that he has kidnapped her brother and believes he is sinful, but I did not kill him. Then it is seen that Simon makes Nick's video after abducting him, and he made it viral on social media. Then Simon says to Nick that my sister died because of you. Nick says, "I did nothing. I don't know about your sister." Nick claims that someone tried to trap me using my photos. These are not my real photos, but someone has edited them. Hearing it, Simon is confused. When their video crosses 5 million views, then Simon's friend says to him, "Kill Nick." Then Nick tries to escape from there, but Simon catches him. Nick again says to him, "I did nothing." Nick says to him, "I give my words to you that who has killed your sister, I will search for him and place him in the custody of the police." Hearing it, Simon starts to trust in him, so he releases him. Pia believes in the story of Simon, but the detective was thinking that Simon was telling a lie. Afterwards, Pia tells her family that I have talked with Simon, and it is his statement that he has not killed Nick. Pia says, "I believe he is saying the truth, because it may be possible that someone is misusing the photos of Nick to entrap him." Later, it is seen that Nick's elder son is talking with a girl, where he says to a girl, "How will I know that you are really a girl?" So that girl sends her photo to him. After this, Nick's son watches the video of Mandy. Mandy was the same girl who was in a relationship with Nick. Reporters were asking Mandy about Nick. After this, Nick's son contacts Mandy. The next day, Nick's son receives Mandy's mail with a statement. "I never met Nick. I know nothing about him," he told Pia. Then they both moved to detective. Pia knows they are going to close this case. Pia says to Nick's son, "The case is going to close. We have to do so as they may start the case investigation again. After this, Pia goes to her computer expert friend. Pia's friend tells her that I have heard something about Nick. That Nick was in a relationship with one of his students named Tara. After this, Nick's son sends a message to his friend that I want to meet you. That girl rejects him at the beginning. After that, she sends her location to him. Later, Nick's son goes to his friend's house to meet her. Nick's son reveals to his friend here that it has been tried to entrap Nick and Sarah. If we meet Catfish, then this fact will be proven, that my father is guiltless. Then that girl says to him, you should talk to Emma, as you are the son of Nick, so she will surely talk to you. After this, they talk with Emma. Emma tells Nick's son that I used to talk with your father daily, but I never met your father. If that catfisher has sent the photos to Emma, then I can tell after checking from where have they been sent. After this, Pia goes to meet Nick's student. It is known here that Tara's affair was not with Nick but with his friend. So Tara wanted to leave the team, but Nick did not want it. So controversy started between them. Tara says that I had also broken up with Nick's friend. Nick's friend uploaded my photos on the internet to take revenge. And Nick had also suggested that I report on his friend. After this, Pia goes to the sports center of Nick. She wanted to check Nick's friend's computer, but it was secured by password. Then the sports center manager enters the password into the computer. Pia checks computer, then she gets all detailed data about Nick. After that, Pia informs the detective that I examined Nick's friend's computer, and the whole data of Nick is there in that computer. Who knows that it has been committed by Nick's friend? On the other side, Emma sends the photos to Nick's son. Then Nick's son sends a message to his friend, and he asks him to find out where these photos came from. When Pia goes to her house, there is already a Nick friend in the present. Pia tells him that I had met Tara. She told me that you had leaked her photos. Then Nick's friend says, it was my mistake, but I did not harm Nick. Pia says, I have checked your computer. Nick's friend gets angry over this. After this, when Pia's friend comes there, then Nick's friend goes from there. Then Sophie says to her kids, we are going to leave this city. Sophie's younger son is angered by this, and he goes away. Then Sophie's elder son tells her that I have talked with Emma, and it is the saying of Emma that he did not meet with his father. After it, he shows Emma's video call to his mother Sophie, and it is also heard by the younger son of Sophie. After this, he checks his brother's computer. A message is received from his brother's friend, in which she had sent the location of the catfisher. When Sophie checks the room of his younger son, he is not there. When Sophie's elder brother checks the computer, he comes to know that. Where had his brother gone? On the other side, Sophie's younger son comes to a house while tracking the location. His elder brother tries to call him here, but he does not answer the call. His elder brother sends him a message to come back from there. That place is dangerous, but he does not obey him. And when he moves to that house does belong to sports center manager. She resides along with her husband. Now that they both understand it, why has Nick's son come here? So the manager calls Nick's son inside the house. Nick's son understands. He is in danger. He tells my mother that I have come here. But Don Gleed's husband keeps the gun with him to kill Nick's son. The next scene, before 2 years, when Nick had visited the sports center for the first time, where Nick requests that Don change the computer's password. At the same time, Nick receives the message from Mandy. Donnie reads it, and she thinks how good the life of Nick is going on. So Dawn was committing it to entrap the girls after making the fake IDs on Nick's account. Actually, she wanted to know it, which feelings come after taking on the identity of Nick. Such a man is liked by everyone. Once Dawn's husband knows about this reality, her husband says to her, stop all of this. But it was too late. After this, Sophie and Pia move to the house of Dawn. But there is no one at home because they all left the house. After this, they both move to the house and come to know that there is Donnie behind all the scenes or whatever was happening. Meanwhile, the detective also reaches there. Pia tells him that the password to Nick's computer had been given to me by Dawn, who knows that Nick's had been stored on his friend's computer by Dawn. Then they found the car location of Dawn. Meanwhile, Sophie's son tries to make contact with his mother, but Dawn throws the cell phone outside while grabbing it. Then they take Sophie's son to a place. They lock him up, taking him outside. Dawn says to her husband, I did not do it to harm anyone, and I will reveal everything to the police. I should only be punished for this. Following that, we will embark on a new chapter in our lives. No one witnessed Nick coming to our house. After this, it is seen that Nick has come to Dawn's house after escaping from Simon. And he says to Dawn, Sarah committed suicide because of you, and I'm going to tell the cops the whole story. At the same time, Dawn's husband kills Nick. Afterwards, it is seen that Nick's son has escaped from there in some way. Dawn and her husband chased him. They fire their gun at him, but he remains safe. Later, Dawn's husband captures Nick's son, but Dawn is caught by the police. Then Dawn tells the police that Nick's son is with my husband. After this, she brings her husband to the police. The detective says to Dawn's husband, "Surrender yourself." So Dawn's husband releases Nick's son. Dawn asks her husband to drop the gun, but he doesn't do that. So detective fires his gun at him. Due to this, he has died. After this, Pia leaves, accompanied by his family. Sophia says thanks to Pia, and the series ends here. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.